Some were entirely new ventures, whereas others were annexed from rival foreign powers, like New York, which was seized from the Dutch in 1665. England also significantly developed its trading networks in Africa and the East Indies, with the building of factories and fortified trading posts. A critical component to this mercantile success was the creation of the Royal African Company in 1660, who, over the subsequent decades, would become the leading participant in the brutal yet highly lucrative transatlantic slave trade. During this period, Scotland also began to establish overseas colonies of its own, having looked on somewhat enviously at the successful endeavours of the English. Unfortunately, almost all these attempts ended in failure, with colonies in Nova Scotia, Cape Breton and Carolina barely lasting a few years. The most abject failure of Scotland's colonisation attempts, however, came in 1698 with the Darien Scheme. This aims to establish a colony controlling the overland trade route of the Isthmus of Panama between the Atlantic and Pacific Oceans. To finance the expedition, an immense amount of capital was raised from the public, which accounted for almost a fifth of the wealth in Scotland at that time. When the ships arrived at the coast of Darien, they named the colony Caledonia and set about constructing a settlement called New Edinburgh. The attempts of the colonists, however, were to ultimately prove futile, as the settlement quickly succumbed to food shortages, tropical disease, and attacks from nearby Spanish forces. Despite a resupply in 1699, the settlement was abandoned, and the survivors, who totaled just a few hundred of the original 2,500, returned to Scotland in disgrace. Due to the total disaster of the Darien Scheme and the loss of public money that had been invested into it, Scotland was plunged into a financial crisis. Many then considered that their best and only chance of being part of a major power would be to share in the benefits of England's colonial enterprise. By the turn of the 18th century, England and Scotland remained independent kingdoms, although the Glorious Revolution of 1688 had dramatically shifted the political landscape within the British Isles. The Catholic James II was deposed and replaced with his Protestant daughter Mary and her Dutch husband William, who became King William III of England and Scotland. Legislation was passed in England so that only Protestants could inherit the throne, but this law did not apply in Scotland, and so, under the reign of Queen Anne in the early 1700s, efforts were made to unite the parliaments of both nations and secure a Protestant line of succession for the monarchy.